Back again. Welcome to Gayside Stories, you guys, where the gay shit goes. I'm your host, Trilificent. Thank you so much for joining me for another week. Remember, you can listen to this show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, your favorite podcast app, or at GaysideStories.com/shows. Also, remember to use the hashtags GaysidePod and Pods by QPOC when you're live tweeting or posting about the show. Those hashtags, they do help people find shows and whatnot. And as you know, I am trying to grow and help our community with the Pods by QPOC hashtag and directory. So I would really appreciate it if you guys use those hashtags when you tweet about my show when you're listening. Send in your gay side mail to GaysideStories@gmail.com. Letters, compliments, show topic ideas, stories, whatever it is that you want to send in, go ahead and do so. And speaking of stories, just to give you guys an idea of the kind of things that you can send to the inbox, I want to talk a little bit really quick about this guy that I just interacted with over the past week. And when you listen to the rest of this episode, you'll see how this actually fits. The timing was spot on. So I'm on Jacked, which anyway, I come across this guy, a small guy from Dallas, or lives in whatever, Dallas. And he messages me. We message back and forth. We start texting, but his attitude kind of grated my nerves a bit. But I was like, it could just be me being surly. So let me just continue to see what the conversation is like, where it goes, etc., etc. So he texts me one day, what am I doing? And blah, blah, blah. He asks me if I'm coming to Dallas. And I'm like, not that I'm aware. I'm like, who's going to pay for it? And it launched into this whole tirade of I'm the bottom and I can't believe you asking me to pay for stuff and da 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 da. And I knew that he was joking, but I also know that a lot of times that kind of stuff is rooted in, if not seriousness, then a deep-seated wish. And the other thing with that was his quote-unquote joking. It just wasn't funny. And so he kept going on and on and on. And I was kind of flat in my responses because it wasn't funny. And for whatever reason, he didn't pick up on that. And it got to the point where I'm just like, look, we don't really know each other like that to be joking. So let's do better. And he had some kind of response that was real flippant. And if anybody knows me, you guys know I don't suffer other people's attitudes, especially if I'm being nice and I'm not giving you a reason to have an attitude with me. If I'm just answering your questions and doing whatnot honestly, and you start kind of being catty about the mouth, then that's my cue to check out. So I checked out. And he texted me later that evening. It was like, oh, so you're just not going to talk to me for the rest of the evening? And I saw it later because I was busy recording. And I did text him later. I was like, I was busy. And he's like, oh, okay. And I'm just like, okay. Fast forward a couple of days. He texts me on this past Friday. And he's like, oh, good morning. Happy Friday. And do you just not want to communicate with me and be honest? Everything was be honest, be honest, be honest. And I'm like, I haven't given you any reason to suspect that I haven't been honest, but okay. And I told him, I said, I don't have a problem communicating with you, but we don't know each other well enough to know how the other communicates and how the other jokes. So let's get to know each other better before we start doing all that. You would have thought that I called his mama the fattest, roundest, non-cookingest bitch ever in life. He just went on this whole, again, tirade. And was like, I can't believe you haven't gotten over that. And I put LOL on my messages. That means I'm joking. Don't you know what LOL means? And at that point, I said, you know what? I'm on disengage completely because my instinct, hashtag niggy sense, was ready to go off. Because what you're not going to do is try to talk to me like I'm stupid just because I don't like your jokes. Or I don't like the way you choose to communicate with me. And I'm being honest and telling you that. But I didn't. I held back and I said, you know what? Based on how this conversation is going and your flippant attitude, we don't need to communicate any further. Have a nice day. And I blocked him in text, and I went to Jacked and I blocked him on Jacked as well, because say what you want, I don't need that kind of negativity in my life. I'm not about to sit here and explain to you why the way you're speaking to me is trash when I don't know you. If I tell you these are the things we need to do on both ends to be able to communicate, and your immediate response is defensiveness, you can suck my motherfucking dick. And I don't mean that in a good way. Kiss my black ass. But I didn't say that. Like I said, I kept it classy because I was at work and I really didn't have the energy to be doing all that. I knew once if I opened that door and let that other Gemini twin come out to play, it would have been a wrap. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm going to disengage. Enjoy your life. And hopefully you find someone that likes that type of joking and sense of humor and all of that. I say all that to say, again, those are the types of stories that you guys can write into the show, and I'll read them on the show. Maybe we can interact about it. GaysideStories@gmail.com. Also, I am still looking for a guest or guests to come on to the show to talk about alternate types of relationships. I'm talking about polyamory, thruples, which is a terrible word, but okay. All of that kind of stuff. So if you're interested, reach out on Twitter or, again, send an email to GaysideStories@gmail.com and we can work that out. Lastly, I want to say rest in peace to Jamel Myers. That was the 9-year-old that took his life after coming out as gay and being bullied. He had already been being bullied for a school year prior, came out, went to school, was bullied, and within 4 days took his life. And for a more succinct and passionate breakdown of that, and also why it is not okay and is really tired of, people, celebrities and whatnot using harmful language and just being like, oh, I was young, I didn't know no better. Listen to last week's episode of The Read entitled Toy Story. At the end, Kid Fury and Crystal really gave a pretty much spot on interpretation of that, why it's trash and why he and she and I'm sure more other people are fed up. I'm tired of the, oh, I was young. I'm tired of the, I didn't know no better. I'm tired of the, well, where I grew up, blah, 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 blah. Who cares about any of that? There's no geographic location. There's no hood. There's nowhere on this planet where the F word or other words that we know are used to demean this community were used in a positive way. So kiss everybody's ass on that. But again, listen to the read on that. But again, I just want to give a moment of silence for little Jamel Myers. All right. Hopefully he is resting in peace. And now let's get into this episode. Enjoy. All right. I am here with Teddy, the first trans man I've had on the show. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for agreeing to be on. And I think that this is going to be a very good conversation. I anticipate that I will probably learn some things, and hopefully my listeners will too. But before we get into that, let's play a game, and let's do a little icebreaker. So we're going to start with the queer query. Question. First up, rapid fire question. So I'm going to say a word, and you say the very first thing that comes to mind without pausing to think.
All right, let's go.
First word, faith.
Evans.
Truck.
Driver.
Star.
Search.
Show.
Intel.
Taste.
Buds.
I don't know why that's tickling me. That's real though, Star Search. Taste
right.
buds.
Right. Listen, that Star Search. Ah, man, you're bringing out the age in me.
I had to compose myself on that first one because when you said Evans. Okay, next question. What song or songs do you play when you're ready to turn up to get you in the mood? Like when you're ready to party.
Honestly, I'm a huge 3 6 Mafia fan.
Hey.
So I would have to say "Who Run It" by 3 6 Mafia.
Okay. Good selection.
Definitely.
Good selection.
Definitely.
All right, last question, and then we can consider the ice broken. Oh, this might be a little heavy. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Jeez. In 10 years, alive, healthy. I've honestly done everything it is that I've wanted to do. Um, so at this point, it would just be more or less like traveling the world and just doing more stuff with what I love. I'm a simple dude. So it's just like, always looking to work on myself, and just try to live my best life.
Nothing wrong with that. Shout out to you for that. We all need to be out here trying to live our best life. So 10 years from now, I hope I'm doing just that. And whatever that encompasses, whatever it entails, I will be open to receiving it as long as I'm enjoying my life,
Yeah, that's the best part of it. There is no living if you can't just enjoy your life, enjoy doing something that you love.
Right. And it doesn't have to always be big, grandiose things. It doesn't mean yachts in the Mediterranean. Like, if enjoying yourself means sitting down with a glass of wine and a bowl of popcorn a la Olivia Pope, if it means Corona and PS4, if it means going skating, like, it could be simple things. You don't have to be out here trying to keep up with the Joneses to be able to say I'm enjoying my life.
That's true. I've always believed that the little things and the simple things mean the most to people.
Yeah.
Without having to, live beyond your means.
Woo. Because that's. Woo.
Listen, a lot of people out here flexing, and hey, I mean, shout out to those flexes. I'm not here to hate or judge nobody, but
I'm not here to hate, but I'm also not contributing to your GoFundMe if things go awry. That's all I'm gonna say.
Just because you decide to, pop bottles and rent Ferraris while down in Miami, and next thing you know, you got a GoFund account to pay your rent. It's not happening.
So I'm good, love, enjoy. But shout out to you. All right, so now that the ice is broken, we're gonna slide on to the main topic. So, because you are the first trans man that I'm having the pleasure of actually talking to and interviewing, I had I don't want to say a standard list, but I had some things that I wanted to go down to and talk about to not only give myself a better understanding of the things that you guys go through in your experience, but also for my listeners, for people who may not be as familiar with trans men. Because it's my firm belief that in the LGBTQIA spectrum, trans people, yeah, I know.
Listen, it could all be so simple.
It could, but but in that spectrum, I feel like trans people's voices are the least heard, and even within that, I feel like trans men's voices are the least heard. So I feel like it was very important to me to have someone on, and so I'm glad that you agreed to come onto the show. So first, I want to talk a little bit about lifestyle. So tell me a little bit about your acceptance of being trans and what your coming out experience was like, if you had one.
To be honest, everything flowed so smoothly. Um, and when I say this, it doesn't take away from somebody else's coming out story or struggles that they may have encountered. Um, I do want, listeners to know that everybody's story is different. My story in particular, it flowed natural. Like it was, I think the most challenging thing was getting people to um, come on board with the pronouns. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and still to this day, like people like, it's kind of like that saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So it's
Right.
like, as far as like my grandmother and stuff, like sometimes she'll still slip up, and I just give her that eye, and she changes it, or she'll catch herself um, before it fully comes out. So I think that was the most challenging part of it all, was just getting, family on board as far as to not misgender me, especially out in public.
Right. Right.
That was the biggest thing.
Okay. So when did you realize that you were trans? Was that an early revelation or
Um,
was it later?
it was early. Like I've always been. I hate to say rebel. I hate to use that term, but I've always went against the norm. So it's like, even when I was, excuse me, even when I was dating females, um, it was kind of rare that you caught me with a feminine female.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would date dominant females, or studs, AGs, as you would call it. But at a younger age, it was more or less like I knew that I was different from a lot of females. Hell, I had a mustache at the age of 9,
Oh,
and I never cut it. Like
okay.
I just I never cut it. I just always just rolled with it. But I didn't really, mentally, I didn't know what it was. I mean, at a young age, you're not really thinking about really what you're going through or experiencing internally, until you get older and you should actually start doing research yourself about, what you're feeling and what's going on with you.
Yeah, that makes sense. You have the feelings, but you don't necessarily have the lingo to go with it at a younger age.
Correct. So it was more or less like me just gradually learning myself, learning who I am, learning what I like, learning what I'm attracted to, things like that. And even like as far as dysphoria, it's just like I've never really experienced anything like that. It was more or less just like embracing my body for what it was.
Okay, makes sense. So, since you brought up body, I want to talk a little bit about healthcare because I had a trans woman on, a friend of mine named Bianca, and we talked about some of the things that she's gone through. And because again, the trans woman's voice is a little bit more elevated. I'm not saying that trans women are out here just plastered all over. I knew a little bit more going into it, but I can be honest and say I know virtually nothing when it comes to trans men's health care. So tell me a little bit
That's
about that.
respectful. Um, it's basically, mental health is
Mm-hmm.
first. You know, you have to make sure that you're mentally prepared to go on this journey, mentally and emotionally. more than physically. Um, so it's just like here in Boston, there's a health center, Fenway Health, some amazing physicians, amazing therapists, where you're able to talk about, what you're feeling and how you're feeling, without being judged. And, you know, as far as going through the whole transition and process, they make sure, that they thoroughly engage in conversation with you to make sure that this is 100% what it is that you want to do. Because the worst thing that you can do is say that you're ready for something, um, and mentally and emotionally you say, yes, I'm on board, and then years down the line you're realizing that you made the biggest mistake of your life, because there are physical changes that are permanent. um, and I've actually, experienced talking to some people who have stopped transitioning because it wasn't what they wanted to do. So I think the mental is more, to me, important. It's more important than the physical gain.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're mentally, it's kind of like with everyday life. You can say that you're ready for something and want to do something, but that doesn't mean that you can't sleep on it and change how you feel.
No, that makes complete sense.
It's a process. Like, you do have to talk to a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
and get a therapy letter before you even start taking testosterone. And they have to make sure also too, that you don't have any health issues going on with you, um, because there's some testosterone that could have, it could make the situation worse as far as your health. So you just have to be mindful, one, about what you're either injecting into your body or placing on your body, things like that. And they work to make sure that this is 100% what you want to do, not what somebody else wants you to do, like, i.e., your partner, or your family, or somebody like persuading you to do this. They want to make sure that you're thoroughly, it's what you want to do.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Did you have any issues finding healthcare providers, or was it pretty smooth?
It would honestly, it was smooth. It was smooth to me. Like I said, Fenway Health, shout out to them again. They have some amazing people down there. Uh, Went to a therapist, talked to a therapist. Actually had quite a few sessions with the therapist, and after that, I got my letter, and I started taking testosterone. And the one thing I do want to say is, just because you do start, taking testosterone, that doesn't mean that is that's only half of the battle. You know, you still deal with mental and emotional stuff.
Mm-hmm.
To this day, there's still some times where I'm not questioning my transition, but you know, um, you try to keep your levels balanced. So it's just like you definitely, you have to make sure that you stay up to date with making your appointments and things like that, because when your levels are off, it definitely affects you as an individual. And you can tell, like, you can tell your body starts feeling different. Emotionally, you may start feeling different. Physically, you may start feeling different. So it's just like, it's I think overall, when it comes to transitioning, is make sure that you're keeping up with your health. Like, that's honestly the number one thing, because you're not going to be good to anybody in this community laying 6 feet under.
That's a word. Woo. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. What about employment? Have you had any issues with employment, or has that too been pretty smooth for you?
Um, I'm a truck driver. Um, I own my own company. The I it's crazy. I think when you transition, when you've been at a certain place for a long time, and you transition with that in a certain place, i.e., with the same employer, and people are actually seeing you go through your transition, I
Mm-hmm.
think that can be one of the hardest things, as opposed to either not working and transitioning and somebody meeting you for the first time. Like like the place that I work out of, um, it's a big market, where I load my truck out of. So there's people there that basically went through me transitioning. You know what I'm saying?
Uh
Like they
huh.
seen changes and stuff like that. And I had last year, um, I had a few issues of bullying, um, but it ended up working out in my favor. You can't please everybody. I'm not here. I wasn't put on this earth to please everybody. I get it. Some people accept things, some people don't. But it becomes an issue, to me, when you're doing something just simply out of hate.
Okay.
So, you know, I think because I these people seen me and seen the changes that I was going through, it was, for whatever reason, it was something that bothered them internally. So they felt that um, they wanted to impose their negative energy on me.
Right. Okay. Well, we know that that is not uncommon when it comes to our community, but I'm glad that it wasn't worse because, we've all heard stories about it being a lot worse. And I know that the employment rates for trans people in general are much lower than other pieces of the community pie. But that
Correct.
was a very interesting point of view that you gave about people actually seeing you transition versus meeting you after you've already transitioned.
Correct. I mean, and don't get it twisted. Your transition is never over. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's kind of it's take away the transition part and just say living life. It's like you never fully know yourself. Um, you every day you're finding out something new about yourself. You're learning something new about yourself, and that's just a part of life. Um, where you can grow old and be ready to kick the bucket, but there's still going to be some things that you can learn about yourself. You know what I'm saying? And that's basically like how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So let's talk a little bit about safety. You mentioned a small stint of bullying during your transition at your place of employment. I'm wondering though, do you take any extra precautions as far as keeping yourself safe? Is it more of a, for lack of a better term, privilege because you're masculine presenting that you feel like you don't have to deal with those issues, but then it's also coupled with a, because I'm openly gay, then I have to worry about myself that way?
Um, Honestly, when I go out every day into the world, I don't really think about none of that stuff. What people see is what they get. So when people see me, and quite frankly, a lot of people don't even know that I'm a trans man,
Right.
unless they make it to my, social media. But just everyday life for me, I just live my life. Um, I live my life as a man, and that's what people see. So it's never a question of do I feel unsafe, because I'm not out here, um, with a banner on my back saying, "Hey, I'm trans." Like
Mm-hmm.
that's that's not what I'm doing. Um, so like I said, it's different strokes for different folks. Um, what I say is privilege. Um, I wouldn't necessarily say that because every individual expresses themselves individually. Some people are very vocal about them being trans and have no problem, wearing buttons or wearing shirts and stuff like that, and that's fine. You know what I'm saying? If I had a shirt that says I'm a trans man, I would wear it proudly. Do I think that my safety? Um, do I think there would be a problem with that, or somebody would try to do anything? No, no. A lot of people know me in Boston. A lot of people respect me in Boston, so that's one of the things I can say that I'm fortunate to have is because a lot of people do know me, a lot of people respect me, and when I go or travel to other states, these people don't know my business, so it's kind of just like again, it goes back to if I'm not displaying it, they see what they get.
Okay. That makes total sense. So let's switch gears a little bit, and I want to get your thoughts on gender versus sexuality, because given everything that people know or don't know, the information is out there, a lot of people still confuse the two. So I think it is always interesting to get those definitions from someone who clearly had to make those distinctions in order to really, for lack of a better term, live their best life. So I'm curious
Um,
about how you feel about that.
well, gender identity is basically it's basically about who you are. Um, Sexuality, sexual orientation. That's about who you're attracted to, who you fall in love with, who you vibe with. Um, it's basically when it boils down to sexual orientation, it's just like I said, I'm openly gay male, um, and I have no shame in that. I have no shame in saying what I'm attracted to physically, mentally, and emotionally. Uh, do I find females attractive? Yes, I have no problem saying, oh, I think she's beautiful or something like that. But I know physically and mentally who I would vibe with and who I'm attracted to. And I think a lot of times people get that misconstrued because they don't realize that there is a difference um, between that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that was probably the simplest way, but the most effective way to define those terms. I think most people should be able to digest that. Should being the
Yeah,
key
it's
word.
it's 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 very it's very simple, gender identity basically um it's uh, like what you feel internally. Um a lot of times like people's gender identity, it does not fit within those, being a man or being a woman, which is why there are so many, umbrella terms that people are now using. Um, but it's basically just about who you feel you are. Internally, I did not feel
Mm-hmm.
that I was a female. That's not what I identified as. But that doesn't have anything to do with my sexual orientation.
Right.
It's two different things.
Right. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that get on your nerves. So I want to talk about common misconceptions and annoyances. So I know we talked specifically about one earlier, but I'm curious to know if you have any others that you wanted to talk about before we get into the boundaries issue.
Um, it more or less like goes back to sexual orientation. I think a lot of times, um, people like to place these labels and titles on people, and don't realize that not every trans man is straight. Not every trans man is gay. Not every trans man is bisexual. It's just like every trans man is different. They like different things, and all it takes is asking a person, what they're attracted to. And it's the same thing for trans women. There were some trans women who were lesbians. There are some trans women who are straight. There are some trans women who identify as whatever they, sexual orientation they want to identify as. But I think that is one that grinds my gears, because I want to say this. When it boils down to trans men, I just want people to stop assuming. Stop assuming that just because somebody transitions into a male, that they're automatically gay, or that they have to be gay. And like you, people weren't put on this earth specifically for a certain individual. And I think that some people just don't understand that. Just like you have down low men, you have some down low trans men. It's just all about respecting individuality and respecting people's privacy.
That makes total sense. And I do think people often struggle with the mentality that everything that I come across, everyone that I come across, is not for my individual consumption. So I'm glad that you made that point.
Yeah, you definitely have some people out here who think they are just the best thing since sliced bread and feel like they can change or get whoever they want. And they take it personally when they get rejected, but they're not understanding why they get rejected. You can't change a person. That person has to change on their own. So It's just like you may sit there one year and want to try to talk to a trans man, and that trans man may be like, nah, I'm not really into that. I'm not feeling that. Respect it. Don't go off on a tangent because you got rejected. And I do understand people handle things differently. Rejection can be one of the worst things that a person possibly faces.
Ooh.
However, you do have to respect the individual, that just because they're rejecting you, that doesn't mean to sit there and be like, oh, you're a female anyway. Okay, well, but you was trying to talk to me. So 5 minutes prior to you getting rejected, you was all aboard. And now that I'm telling you I'm not interested in you, or I'm telling you that's not how I get down, you want to resort to misgendering me.
Yeah, I did a whole episode about how men specifically, but I would say probably people too, are not conditioned to understand and accept rejection, that it's a part of life. So shameless plug, if you guys are interested in that, I did that with Kevin Dwayne from The Outline. I think that was episode 22. Anyway, so we talked a little bit about boundaries being one of your annoyances. So let's get into that a little bit. What about boundaries are you finding the most annoying when it comes to dealing with people?
I'm I'm realizing that some people they don't have any. And I respect people's forwardness. I'm a very straightforward person. I tell it how it is, whether you like it or not. However, there's levels to the shit. That's really the perfect way to sum it up. Now, the best way to describe this is basically like engaging in oral sex. Just because one person may like something, or how you like let's say for instance, you Trill. Let's say you was in a relationship and you know you was with somebody and they thought you was like a 10 in that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
But then you meet somebody else and they think in that aspect you're trash. You know what I'm saying? It's different strokes for different folks. The way you present yourself to one person and how it comes off, and they may accept it. That doesn't mean the next person is going to accept that type of treatment or that type of vibe that you're giving off. Okay. So it's more or less like if you find somebody interesting, find out more about the person instead of just jumping into. I don't know. It's crazy because I find with gay men, everything quickly resorts to sexual conversation.
Yeah.
When a lot of times I just be really just wanting to vibe out. And this is me personally speaking. I feel like nowadays, instead of in relationships and out relationships, I feel like, people don't even know who they're dealing with or talking to because everything resorts to sexual conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, that's fine if that's how you want to base your situation or who you're dating or who you're in a relationship or with who you're trying to get to know. But meeting the next person, they may not be too fond of that.
Yeah.
Because they may just look at you like as a friend and somebody that, they can see being cool with. So yeah, as far as boundaries go, it's kind of just like stay in your lane. Yeah. If you're unsure, ask. You know what I'm saying? It does not hurt to ask instead of just jumping out the boat with no life jacket on.
I find that with gay men, oftentimes they are either incapable or unwilling to read the room, so to speak. They have this mindset that if I have decided that this is how this is supposed to work, then everyone that I come across should be on the same wavelength. And if they're not, then there's something wrong with them. In conjunction with, I don't know how to disagree with people, so I'm going to start disrespecting them. Case in point, gay men love to tell everyone else how they're supposed to use these apps. Like, it's not up to you to define how I decide I want to use Jacked. That's not up for you. If you want to use Jacked to not have a picture and go straight from one message to dick in hand and mouth or whatever the case may be, that's fine. Do what you do. But you don't get to get on there and get mad at me because I don't want to interact in that same way. I get to decide how I want to handle that situation. And I think, again, a lot of gay men, they just don't know or they refuse to read the situation.
Learn their boundaries.
Right. You crossing a whole boundary with me.
I've had that happen to me actually yesterday. Where I was on Jack and a guy asked me what it was that I was looking for, and I basically told him, like, I'm looking for friends, cool people to hang out with. Understand something, this lifestyle is new to me, and I'm saying new to me in a sense where I wasn't always a gay male, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like I'm learning every day. I'm learning different stuff every day. Mm-hmm. But when I said that, his response was, well, I'm up here in age, so I'm really, like, this is a sex app. And I'm just like, I find it weird that you say it's a sex app, because if that was the case, when I opened up Jack, it would say Jack, the number one sex app, the number one hookup app. It does not say any of that. Some people honestly, genuinely are out here just looking for friends or, looking for connections. And like I said, that goes back to each its own. If you happen to see somebody and they're just like, oh, I'm looking for right now, I'm looking for sex, hey, by all means, shoot your shot. But if that's not the vibe that I'm getting, and we're 20 deep in the conversation, and you come across like, so when we meet or not, it's kind of just like, well, I never gave you that impression that I was on here for sex. So if you was just engaging in conversation with me, with the end result to be that, then shame on you. And had you told me that from the jump, I would have stopped you in your tracks.
Right. It's just like, we're all here for our own individual purpose. And that was a very odd way to come at you. Like, I'm up there in age, as if like I don't have time. It's like, what? It's like, I mean, do you have one foot in the grave? I'm confused. Anyway, I think it's
right. I'm like, if you up there in age, you really should be out here living your best life. Like, don't stop at me. Like,
yeah, like you might as well keep
let's
it
not
moving.
waste each
Like,
other's time.
don't even waste your time trying to tell me why I'm wrong. Like, just keep it pushing, Papa. But I think it's a form of not being able to handle that rejection. Like, you are consciously deciding not to interact in the way that I want to interact, and I don't know how to process that, or I refuse to learn how to process that. And so then it goes into, it may not even necessarily tip over into disrespect, but then
oh shoot,
it's that anger, and it's that then they want to lecture you about your choices. And then, again, I have to agree with you. Sometimes I get those messages where they start going off like that, and I'm just like, all of this time that you are wasting sliding your thumbs across your device, you could have found someone by now.
Exactly. And what was it? A few years ago, I had a guy. This guy was super cool. Engaged in conversation, nothing sexual. Excuse me. We exchanged numbers, and he asked for a picture. Not nothing nude, but just asked for a picture. I sent over a regular picture, and he was like, "What's wrong with your chest?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He was like, "You have scarring on your chest." And I said, "Well, I'm a trans man," and that right there. Oh, why did you lie to me? Yada yada yada. And I said, "Hold up, partner." I said, "Pump your brakes." I said, "I never lied to you." I said, "It's right there on my profile." I said, "That's why reading is fundamental." So I didn't get no message back. And then maybe 5 minutes later, and in my head, I'm sitting here saying, well, he must have went back to the app, looked at my profile, and said, "Oh shit."
Yeah, I missed that. Oops.
Right. So it's like you sitting here trying to blame me, acting like I deceived you, or basically like I deceived you and tricked you into something where the proof was in the pudding. It was right there. All you had to do was read, so now you're upset because you done vibed with somebody who was out the norm for you. And that's fine, because like I've had conversations with people where I feel like they're a different type of gay men. There are gay men who have never been with females before. And I say female as far as the female anatomy.
Okay.
There are gay men who have, and I find it that those who have been in contact with the female anatomy are more respectful than those who haven't. And it's just because those who haven't, they are finding themselves in a place where it's just like, holy shit, here I am attracted to somebody who is a man, looks like a man, but they may have something different between their legs. And it's just like, why do you stop there? Why do you stop there? If you're vibing with me, that shouldn't matter, because we haven't even crossed that bridge to even start talking about engaging sexually. So it's just like, if you're vibing with me, I feel like a mental vibe is more important than a physical vibe. Because if I can't rock with you mentally, there's no point of us even trying to cross that bridge. What are we gonna do? Have angry sex? Have confused sex? It's, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of just like, I have to vibe with you.
Yeah, there has to be some mental compatibility and that aura and vibe and everything before you get to sexual compatibility. I do agree with that. And I do think, again, a lot of men, they gloss over that because they're so used to, you're a man, you got a dick, I want dick, or I want ass, and it shouldn't be that complicated. And it's like, it doesn't have to be that complicated, but you do need to stop and think. And even as a cisgender man in these situations, I'm just like, okay, well, let's have a little bit of a conversation so I can know who the hell I'm talking to. And they get upset, like, you wasting my time and da 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 da. And it's just like, I don't know you, my dude. Like, and you're not catching me at peak horniness levels where I may let some shit slide. You know, I'm owning, I'm walking in my truth on that. I'm not perfect. I'm still working on myself, but most of the time I'm not that hard pressed to have someone in my bed or in my jaws or me be in their jaws. Like, and I say this often, and I truly do mean it. Like, I don't want nobody in my house. So we have to establish some level of comfort for me to even want to be in your presence. When I say I don't want nobody in my house, I don't just limit that to my physical dwelling. I'm talking about my personal space. And so it takes a level of comfort and some conversation for me to get to that point. And we're not even going to talk about the inability to establish that with people who don't want to show you what they look like. That's a whole different conversation. But I am pulling y'all's whole card on that. Let it not be misunderstood.
Some guys, and the crazy part about it is not every guy that doesn't have a picture is on the down low. They probably just haven't gotten around to posting the picture, or they may feel like they're not attractive enough. You know, that's something else I'm learning with gay men. It's like you have to have a certain physical physique in order for people to even, you know, pay some attention to you.
It is a very superficial market. But when I say that, I mean, I am not one to... It's hard for me to vibe with someone if I don't know how they look. Whether you're attractive or not, I don't want to sit here and have this long, drawn-out conversation with a ghost. Especially when the reason why, more than likely, we're having this conversation is because you like how I look. But there's a lot of politics
that boils down to... That boils down. I mean, you can break that down into rejection too,
of course.
Because who are we to say that a good conversation vibe is more important than a physical vibe? But yet, if we're vibing out with somebody and they don't have a picture, maybe in their head they're just like, you know, let's see how this conversation goes. Because you can't say, and I'm gonna challenge you on this. Okay. You can't. I'm pretty sure you probably can't ever say that you've engaged and had a thoroughly good conversation with the individual without seeing what they look like. But as soon as they sent over that picture and they weren't what you were physically attracted to, conversation stopped right there. And I'm only challenging you this because I know for myself, as messed up as it sounds, I've done that before. I've had weeks worth of conversation, and it didn't dawn on me that I hadn't asked this person to send over a picture. But when they did, it was kind of just like, whoa.
Okay, so I'm glad that you bringing this up because I think it's a good way to highlight the difference as far as our experience in the gay world. I don't like the term lifestyle, because when I was younger, absolutely, like, if we can sit up here and have a conversation, and oh, you like this and I like this, oh, you like oxtail with gravy, I like oxtail with gravy too, cool, you know, like, we vibe. And then you show me your picture and you look like oxtail with gravy, and I'm like, ooh.
Right, just left on red.
Right. But now I am at a point where, you know, because I'm a man of a certain age, you know, I'm 34 years old, but I've been doing this shit since I was like, right. And this is why I'm saying this is highlighting the difference because I've been doing this shit since I was like 19. So now I'm at a point where it's like I'm not even going to too much engage in the conversation if I don't know how you look. And it doesn't have anything to do with whether or not I'm attracted to you, because I may not, more than likely, I'm not really looking for that type of thing. Like, I'm more so like you. Like, if I'm on there and I don't mind just having a conversation and leaving it at that. It doesn't necessarily have to jump from the app to the bedroom. But in any other instance, when I'm having a conversation with someone, I know how they look. So to me, most times I cannot get over that hurdle of I don't know who the hell you are. I don't know what you look like. I'm not able to bridge that gap and make that connection, because for me, a lot of times if we're having a conversation, I'm imagining in my head what you're looking like, the faces you be making when you laugh. I'm picturing what you look like when you laugh, or if I know how you look when you laugh, that's what I see. And so for someone, if I can't bridge a connection with you if I can't know how you look. It doesn't necessarily have to do anything, because for me, it's different between, am I wanting to see how you look because I'm trying to gauge whether or not I want to fuck you, or am I just trying to see what you look like in order to facilitate a conversation?
Just so you can have an idea of who you're talking to. Yeah, I get that. And some people may look at it as, us being shallow or something. But I mean, like I tell people all the time, the preference. Everybody has their own
preference, and I'm going to put this out here. And people, feel free to challenge me. If you want to tweet me and talk about it, feel free to challenge me, because you brought up that you having this conversation and then they show you how they look and you be like, ooh, disengage. In my experience, and everyone's experiences are different, but in my experience, the guys that I'm not attracted to, I'll put it that way to keep it PC, have some of the worst conversation. So it's like, I don't even bother. I don't even waste my time, because those are the guys, for me, in my experience, those are the, hey, sexy, what you doing, sexy, what you eating, sexy, why you doing this, sexy, why you doing that, sexy. And it's just like, this is not a conversation. But is the conversation
consistent, though?
No, it's usually not.
Conversation consistent?
It's usually not consistent, because to me, that's not a conversation. And then again, because I don't know how you look like off jump, I'm not really engaging. So we're not getting to that point, because you're not getting out of me what you expect, because up front, you're not presenting me with anything to connect to, if that makes sense.
No, it definitely makes sense.
Well, look at you coming from my whole car.
Listen. I listen. I can agree with what you're saying, because I've definitely been that person, and like I said, it doesn't mean that I'm a shallow person. It just means that it's preference.
We have to.
I know what I'm attracted, right? Because not for nothing. Once I see that picture, if you're not somebody that I would be interested in vibing with, and I'm honestly, I'm keeping it cute right now, because I just feel like sometimes you have to watch what you say, so that way you don't offend others,
right?
But if I see the picture and it's not what I'm attracted to, in a sense, it's gonna piss me off, because it's just gonna be like, damn, I wasted time that I cannot get back. And it doesn't matter how good the conversation is, I just know that we would not vibe beyond the app. Like, even if it was on some, I like the vibe, can we go on a date type stuff, if you're not the type of person that I can see myself out there being seen with, the answer is going to be no. Because I
no, that makes total sense.
I hate sounding like that, and I feel like if I was to just be blunt and say what it is that I mean, then people would have more understanding as far as what I'm saying. But that's why I'm just like, it's preference. Everybody has preferences. I feel like those who say they don't, I'm calling your bluff. I'm gonna just tell you straight up, you're lying.
Yeah.
Because everybody has them, regardless of whether it's in a physical sense, a mental sense, emotional sense. Everybody has a preference to who they can see themselves with, or who they could get into a relationship with.
Right. So a couple of points and then we can move into the last thing and wrap this up. I think the word preference gets a bad rep because people, gays specifically, have kind of weaponized it
Of
because
course,
they're
that
usually
no
using it
fats,
in
no
a way,
femmes.
exactly. They're using it in a way that is not just saying this is what I like, this is what I don't like. They're using it in a way to attack people. However, I am a strong proponent of, always have been, and I haven't seen any evidence for me to change how I feel about it. I'm a strong proponent of, you have to be attracted to the people that you choose to interact with on a romantic and physical level. Now, and I think people confuse I'm attracted to this or I'm not attracted to this with whether or not the person is conventionally attractive. Those are two different things.
Right.
Because I can see a man and say, I'm attracted to this man, but I can also be objective and say, he is not necessarily conventionally attractive. Is he going to get thousands upon thousands of followers on Instagram? Probably not. But would I sit on his face? Absolutely. Those are two different things.
Yeah. I see a lot of the no fats, no femmes.
Oh, yeah.
Does it bother me? No, because like I said, everybody has a preference. I think the thing that does bother people about it is when you say no fats, no femmes, and you're fat and you're femme.
I think
It's kind of just
it's.
like, I get it. You don't want to date who you are. Okay, but I can sit here like you. I can sit here and find somebody that I vibe with, find them attractive, and then once we get on the phone, or excuse me, once we exchange numbers and we get on the phone or FaceTime, and I hear that voice for the first time, or I see their demeanors, it may not be something that I'm necessarily attracted to anymore.
I think there's a lot of conversation that could be had around acceptance and what you're attracted to, because sometimes I see this push for everyone should kind of just be into everything, and that's not real life. And I think there's a conflation sometimes between it being accepting and tolerant versus being actually attracted to. So because there's a way to say I am not attracted to heavier men without being on some hateful.
Yeah, being
If
negative about it,
if
of
you ain't never
course.
seen the inside of a gym, motherfucker, you need to put the Big Macs down. And like, it doesn't
Yeah,
take all of that. You could just say I'm attracted to these type of men and leave it at that. No one can really hold that against you because we all like different things. It's when it
exactly.
becomes
It's
negative.
wording. Wording
It's when
is
you
everything.
weaponize it. That's when it becomes an issue.
Correct.
So to wrap this up, I want to talk a little bit about your feelings on representation, and let's start with how you feel about representation for yourself or for trans men within the community. Like, do you? Because I feel like my observation may be projecting a little bit, but I really do feel like in topics, it's like gay men are at the top when it comes to LGBT, and then it's like lesbian women, and then trans men, and then the other sexualities and gender kind of fall below that. They kind of get in where they fit in.
Well, the topic of transgender has, within the past couple of years, have really been at the center of attention. as far, but it's not always in a positive sense.
Right. And it's
You know what I'm
still new.
saying?
When I say
And
that,
it's
I mean in a, as
well,
far as
it's
length
I
of
think
time.
I think with the whole trans men is new, but it's just like, the topic of trans women has always been there. It just kind of sucks that now when you hear about trans women, or trans men, it's followed by them being brutally murdered.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of the thing that sucks. When you do hear about um, someone being transgender, it's always followed by sometimes it's always followed by negative conversation, like as far as the usage of the bathroom, um, the shootings, healthcare, being in the military. It's just like you don't really see a lot of positive stuff um, being said. And honestly, I can't really say there's not positive stuff being said, because there are positive things being said. I think there should be a bigger spotlight um, on trans awareness, trans healthcare, trans mental care,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that everything's kind of starts at the top of the food chain. You do have people who have gotten themselves in places where they can be a voice for the community, because they're a celebrity, or because they've run for office, or they've placed themselves in a space where they could bring it to the forefront of conversation. It's I think it's timing.
Mm-hmm.
you know um I think if more people started focusing more on the right things, and instead of always shining light on the negative things, it would open a lot of people's minds to actually what's going on in the transgender community.
I agree. So, how do you feel about trans men's representation in the media?
I think more can be done. Um, but then it kind of crosses a fine line of, would that man, and I kind of want to stop using the term trans men, because at the end of the day, we're men. Um, would that man be comfortable outing himself?
Mm-hmm.
You have to really think about that first and foremost, because there's a lot of men who aren't comfortable exposing who they are. There are some men who are comfortable, you know what I'm saying, and they're doing things, like fighting for the cause. There's a lot of men out here who are activists, and this is what they do 24/7. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, shout outs to them, big ups to them. Um, because they are trying to make a change. They are trying to um, get trans men, you know, out there, so that way there's more of a conversation about us, so that we're seen, so that we're just not, you know, in the back just waving our hands like, I'm here. I don't really get into I'm not gonna sit here and lie and say I'm an activist or anything like that. I respect everybody's choices, and I stay in my lane. I really do. I stay in my lane. I keep it peaceful for the most part. If I'm out and about and I see something happening, or I'm off the rip, I'm not gonna just sit there and walk by and ignore it, because it doesn't have nothing to do with me. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna do something, say something. Um, but as far as everything else goes, it's just like with me, I'm just out here living my life to the best I can.
Like it's
So
gold.
like I said, shout out to those people who fight the fight. I'm not gonna lie and say that I do.
Hmm.
You know, because I I respect people. You know, I help if people ask me to help. Um, I share things if people ask me to share. You know, I do what I can do.
Yeah. Okay. So, last thing, do you, because you mentioned that a lot of trans men may not necessarily feel comfortable outing themselves as far as media coverage, and I can understand that, but I'm curious about how you feel about representation, just as a blanket. Like you mentioned things about healthcare and whatnot. Do you see trans men getting a fair? Well, fair is not a good term because I know it's unfair. But how do you feel about the representation as it is? Like, not necessarily naming any individuals, just on a blanket. Is there enough talk about trans men healthcare or things of that nature?
I think within the groups that have trans men in them, you
Mm-hmm.
know, there are a lot of groups um, on Facebook and stuff like that. There's always going to be talk. Um, as far as you know, talk as far as the talk going nationally or something like that. I would hope that it's something that can become more of a conversation, I should say. Because like I said, I can't really speak generally. I can
Mm-hmm.
only just speak on, what I'm doing personally, what's going on personally in my life, um, and how are things going for myself. Because my experience isn't going to be somebody else's experience. But overall, I do feel like there can be more conversation.
Okay, makes
And I feel like
sense.
there are people out there who are having the conversation. Whether or not people are listening, that's a whole nother topic though.
Indeed.
That's a whole nother topic. Because there are people who, like I said, like this is their life. That's what they choose to do. They choose to fight the fight. But are people really listening to them?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. That's a whole different tangent about whether or not people are listening, but just curious about how you felt
Yeah,
about.
because you can always bring a conversation to the table, but that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that it's that once you start talking about something that it's not going to fall upon deaf ears.
Correct. So, in closing, do you have any last parting thought?
Like I said, everybody. I just want everybody to live their lives, be free. Be who you are. For people to respect one another, um, and live your best life. That's really all that this is about. I want people to be safe. Um, and just know that the one thing I do want to say is, there are outlets. You may not be able to find them, but the internet is a wonderful thing. Like if you are experiencing depression, suicidal thoughts, mental and emotional health issues, reach out to somebody. It doesn't matter if it's somebody you know or a stranger. If people don't want to listen, find somebody who is willing to listen. Um, because we battle with stuff internally too.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Teddy, I want to thank you again for agreeing to be on the show. And I think I learned a lot more about social type things than anything else in this conversation. So, I appreciate you for that.
Like I said, everybody's experience is different. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like one conversation that you may have with me. We talk about and highlight different areas of, what it's like, but that conversation may be different with, the next individual.
Right.
So,
Right. So tell people where they can find you.
everybody, you can find me on IG and Twitter at TEDDYSNACKZ. That's TEDDYSNACKZ with a Z at the end. On Facebook, you can find me at facebook.com/yellowbear617.
All right. And we are out of here.
Thanks again for having me.
Well, that wraps things up, you guys. Remember, go to GaysideStories.com. That is the hub for all things to do with this show, to do with me, and everything that I have going on. Email your questions and suggestions and all of that good stuff over to GaysideStories@gmail.com. Please remember to rate on Apple Podcasts, 5 stars, please. Make sure that you are sharing this show with someone. Share it with the coworker, with the friend, with the cousin, whoever you think would get something out of it. Thank you so much for listening. And speaking of listening, if you want a little bit more of me or you want me in a different capacity, you can catch me over on Ratchet Ramblings on the CSPN. That is with Jeremy and Candace, where we do recaps of Black reality TV shows such as Love and Hip Hop Hollywood. So check me out over there. And as always, you guys, love yourself. And whether you're bottom, top, verse, or whatever, protect those walls. And I'm out. I will see you guys next week.